Hello listeners and welcome back. Today we are going to be discussing things you either don't see or hear in movies. None of these are major or key plot points within the story, but they are little side notes that they hint at and then never get revealed. For those of you who are still confused about what I mean, let's just jump straight into it. First up, we have Bob's Burgers, The Wedding Speech. This takes place in Season 8, Episode 21. Bob has just been asked to cater for a wedding. We get to witness the ceremony, and when the two go to take their vows, the wind picks up, causing us to miss everything within their speech. It's not the most crucial or frustrating thing when you don't hear the speech, but it does leave you a little bit curious as it is a bit of a strange wedding to begin with, and it'd be interesting to know what they said to one another within their vows.
When Connor and Farah asked me to... Alright, but the only shoes I have are sandals.
My next example is from the movie Before You Go. In this movie, we follow two unlikely strangers who meet, who form an unlikely bond while spending the night running around the city together. At one point in the movie, they find themselves in a hotel room where they stumble upon a feedback card. A card that the hotel supplies asking you to rate your experience. They end up filling out the card together and you don't really see it much after that. That is until the very end of the film. When the two have split up and are going back to their separate lives, Brooke feels the card in her pocket. She looks at it, remembering that it was from the hotel room, but this side on the corner it has an added message telling her to look at the back. As she turns it over, the camera pans away to where we only see her smile. The movie ends right after this moment, therefore never revealing what message was on the back of the card. We can only surmise that it was something genuine and sweet from her reaction, but overall we'll never really know. Next on the list we have Gilmore Girls, Season 1, Episode 2. In this episode, it is Rory's first day at Chilton and Lorelai buys an unreliable clock that does not go off, causing them to be late on their first day. After racing out of the house in a hurry, we get a scene of them driving by Stars Hollow's famous gazebo. In this scene, we see Lorelai rambling non-stop to Rory within the car. However, the camera is panned out and there is slight music playing, so we don't get to hear what Lorelai says on her rant. It's definitely not the most crucial of plot points to miss, but it definitely would have been interesting to hear what Lorelai was ranting about. Next we have The Gorge. Once Lev and Dressa start communicating and form a slight bond, it is revealed that Lev is a little bit of a writer and has been writing a poem for Dressa. And throughout the entirety of the movie, it is only the title that is revealed. At the end of the film, Lev leaves the poem to Dressa, which she eventually reads. If you pause it at the right moment, you will be able to see and read the first half of the poem yourself. However, the second part of the poem is never revealed. It is never in shot, and then it pans away to where you never see it again, leaving you curiously wondering how it all ended up tying up, especially after getting a glimpse of the first half. Next on the list, we have Better Call Saul, the phone booth scene. This scene takes place in Season 6, Episode 11. Saul is in hiding and on the run. He cannot let go of his old life, however, and this is why he is making the phone call in order to check in. We get to see and hear 90% of the conversation that takes place. That is until it pans out of the photo booth, causing us to miss a whole chunk of conversation that took place. Now, I did hear that if you changed the language and chucked on some subtitles, it does reveal what is said. However, for most viewers and a first-time watch, you were left wondering what was said and why they decided to pan out at that moment.
Kim Wexler, I believe she works there.
Next on the list, I have Monte Carlo. In this movie, we follow three girls on their vacation in Paris. That is until one of the girls, Grace, gets mistaken for the very rude, very elite meet heiress Cordelia Wynne from Scott. Before the girls realize it, they are being jetted off to Monte Carlo underneath this mistaken identity. The scene I am referring to is when they have just boarded the private jet on their way to Monte Carlo. Emma stumbles upon a magazine about the real Cordelia. This is where she finds out and reads about some juicy information that is never revealed to us. All we know is that apparently she was caught by paparazzi doing something she was or wasn't meant to do. Unfortunately, that is the last we hear of it. We is never revealed what shocking scandal took place. We are left in the complete dark without any hints of what it could or could not be. It is very disappointing as we find out that Cordelia is quite a scandalous character, and you can come up with infinite scenarios that may or may not have happened. It leaves you guessing and constantly wondering what it could possibly be.
Give me that. What'd I do? What didn't you do?
Next up, we have the 1988's classic Twins. Vincent is a bit of a criminal, always in and out of jail and finding very unconventional ways to make his money. One of these ways is stealing cars. After stealing one car in particular, he opens the trunk to find a mysterious object inside. He also finds a tape with instructions on how to sell it and who to sell it to. After negotiating his price, the only thing said to do is make the delivery. In order to do this, however, he needs to make a longer journey cross-country. Just as he's about to set out on his journey, everyone seems to turn up, seems to question where he is going, what he's doing, and why. Particularly his girlfriend Linda. When she figures out that he's deciding to go on a road trip and wasn't going to tell her about it, she insists on coming along. Vincent tries to discourage this, however Lydia does not back down and instead decides to threaten him with... She blackmails him into taking her by standing at the French porch, yelling out that if he refuses to take her, she is going to tell everybody about, and then he cuts her off. We don't get a single hint on what she was threatening to tell everybody. This so-called mysterious secret was something bad enough that he is willing to let her tag along in order to still keep it a secret. Was it a secret? Or was it more of like an embarrassing story he never wanted revealed? And if so, what kind of story? Is it a criminal story? A sexual story? An embarrassing story? We may never know.
No!
You say no one more time, I'm gonna tell everybody to
Shut up!
Next up on the list, we have Monsters vs. Aliens, the bad guy's story. When Susan is kidnapped by Galazar, he ends up stealing the quantonium from her. When he is instructing it into himself, he brings Susan before him. This is where she questions why he is doing this. Why did he destroy his own planet in the process? This is where he decides to get generous and tell Susan about his life story and how he got to this point. However, whilst he is telling her his story, he is also instructing the quantonium in himself by this device that causes him to be cut off mid-story. So as he's telling Susan about his story, he is consistently cut off at all of the key and interesting moments. We hear little bits and pieces about his past and life story, but due to the fact of him consistently being cut off, none of it is fully concluded or really makes any sense, therefore leaving you extremely confused, still not knowing what is going on, a little bit frustrated, as it seems like it was quite an interesting and bizarre story. So instead of giving us more answers as to like why he is doing this and why he decided to blow up his own planet in the process, we are actually left with more questions. I have seen this movie countless times over the years and am left wondering every single time what this full story could possibly be.
No child should ever have to endure that. So I went on the road with a giant...
Next up, we have to talk about How I Met Your Mother. I have 3 examples of scenarios and jokes within How I Met Your Mom where we are left on knowing the punchline or other end of the conversation. I am also doing these ones in order of curiosity. Coming in first, we have the peanut butter and jelly joke. This joke was only really added to the show as a way to write off Allison's character for a while due to the fact that she was on maternity leave. However, that doesn't change the fact that it leaves us consistently wondering what the punchline is for this joke. What made it so disgusting? And what joke could possibly be so gross that Lily literally refused to hang out with the gang for a while? Unfortunately, it seems as if we may never know.
Barney said the punchline. To this day, it's still the dirtiest joke I've ever heard in my life. And no, I'm not going to say it.
Which brings me on to my second example. What Barney said to Ted in the bar over the earpiece. In the later seasons, Ted is getting more and more restless when it comes to finding the one. So he enlists Barney as his wingman in order to help him find a date. Barney, as always, is bizarre and entirely unfunctional. He has Ted wearing the strangest things and saying the most absurd lines. In particular, this one. Upon consistently using this line, Ted gets absolutely nowhere, and for good reason. So about halfway through the night, Ted is starting to get sick of Barney's shenanigans that are clearly not working. Ted tries to negotiate with Barney, but ultimately gives in and ends up saying the line again anyway. Due to the fact that Barney is in his ear literally with an earpiece, we never hear the other end of the conversation. We know that Barney is both nagging, convincing, and smart when it comes to his tactics of negotiation. Still, that doesn't stop you from wondering what he had said to Ted to still convince him to continue saying that line, despite knowing the possible outcome.
Why can't I just talk to her? Maybe we'll hit it off. Fine.
And last but certainly not least, the most painful one of all would have to be Victoria's story. In the earlier seasons of How I Met Your Mother, Ted is dating a beautiful baker named Victoria. He invites her to one of the gang's game nights. While at this game night, they stumble upon a video of Barney in his earlier days, completely unrecognizable and different from the person he is today. After seeing this, of course, the gang cannot let it go. Barney does agree to tell his side of the story and what happened in exchange for embarrassing stories about themselves. Eventually, the gang starts running out of embarrassing stories. This is where Victoria butts in and offers to share one of her most embarrassing stories. We are only ever left with these three main facts about the story.
It involves a game of truth or dare, a squeeze bottle of marshmallow ice cream top, and the hot tub at my grandparents' retirement community.
Right after that, Ted cuts us off saying that the story was too gross and inappropriate to tell his children. So instead of hearing the story, we are only ever left with this reaction.
That is the greatest story ever.
Oh my God!
Wow.
Which makes it that much more frustratingly annoying, as it sounded like an incredible story that was sure to be a wild ride. But unfortunately for us in the audience, we are forever left unknowing what this embarrassing story could have possibly entailed. Let me know if there was any moments within How I Met Your Mom that I left out, and what story or moment are you most curious about? Next up, we have Forrest Gump's speech. Now, I am aware that in this one, if you go into the settings and change on the subtitles, it does actually reveal what is said during that speech. However, for years after the movie's released, or at least upon your first time watching it, you were left completely baffled about what he could have possibly said during that speech. It is by far one of the most frustrating occurrences on screen, particularly in that movie. Not only has Forrest got a unique mind and unique way of seeing things, but also the concept that he's talking about is quite heavy. So that leaves you curiously wondering what he took away from this experience. Specifically when he mentions there is one key thing he took away from his experience in Vietnam. But just as he goes to express this thought, it is completely cut off and we miss everything, leaving us frustratingly wondering what he possibly could have said. Was it something insightful? Was it something heartfelt? Or was it just typical Forrest banter? Whatever it is, we are left unknowing.
Well, there's only one thing I can say about the war in Vietnam. In Vietnam,
And lastly, for my final example, we have Wreck-It Ralph 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet. At the end of the original Wreck-It Ralph, Fix-It Felix and Sergeant Calhoun make their relationship official by getting married. Now in the second installment, the two are ready to take their relationship to the next level by possibly starting a family. So when Ralph and Penelope decide to ditch out on their games to explore the internet, it leaves Felix and Calhoun to deal with all of the extra kid races from Candy Crush that now don't know what to do since their princess has left the game. The races from Candy Crush are very destructive and crazy wild at the beginning of the film, so we know that Felix and Calhoun definitely have their work cut out for them. We don't see too much of them after that. However, before the movie concludes, we do get one more scene. They are back in Candy Crush, where the kids are ready to start another one of their races. However, this time, instead of being loud and destructive, they are perfectly well-mannered and calm. So he decides to ask Felix and Calhoun what they could have possibly done to whip these childs into shape in such a short period of time. The two just grin at each other, and just as they're about to explain their key advice when it comes to parenting, that is exactly when the race starts and the cars go zooming by, therefore muffling everything it is they had to say. The fact that we have no idea what was said, despite it being tangible advice or not, leaves you immensely frustrated and forever curious of what this advice could possibly be. And unfortunately, I think we just have to come to accept our curiosity, as it may never be revealed what this advice was.
How on earth did you tame those things?
It's simple, Serge. The key to parenting is...
Those are all the examples I have for now. Let me know if there are any other mysterious side plots that you don't hear or see in movies that I might have left out, and which one of these examples are you most curious about. That is all for this episode. As always, everything we discussed will be linked below along with my socials. Please be sure to like, subscribe and follow. Feel free to leave all your thoughts and comments below. Thanks for listening.